Our next album review comes from Twitch subscriber Magician Van Orlando, who asked me to review the 2018 album from Ghost-Prequelle. I've listened to this album numerous times before being asked to review it, first hearing it on its release date under recommendation from resident prog rock and metal snob Sanity Theorist. It is an extremely well-made hard rock album that seems to draw inspiration from 80s hard rock and pop a la Depeche Mode. Hyper-melodic heavy rock, as I called it after a first listen. But I can't let that be all I have to say about this album, can I? So let's get into it. Black Death, always a fun topic to start an album off with. I'm kind of indifferent to the intro Ashes having kids creepily singing nursery rhymes. It should be reserved to horror movie trailers where it is cliche but accepted, because here it just feels cliche. The lead-in at the end of Ashes is fucking amazing though, so I can forgive the singing children. We then get into what I consider to be the true opener of this album, Rats. It's a really good track, the synths are super fun here, and the chorus is built from two amazingly catchy hooks. It doesn't do much, and unlike a lot of albums do in my opinion, doesn't need to show every card in the album's hand to make for a good opener. Faith brings the energy that I got from Rats to a new level. It has the harshest instrumentation on the first half of the album and is probably the most conventionally metal song on the album. Got some really good short post-chorus solos and is extremely memorable. Maybe because it was the first track I heard from this album, but probably because it's well put together and vocally feels like Depeche Mode until the breakdown, which is still really fun in a let's try and sound as demonic as possible type of way. The lead-in at the end of this track really works thematically to set up See the Light, with the church organs reinforcing the themes of religion. See the Light is the song from the album that will be in your head until you die. The clean pianos and writing for the drums during the verses is very reminiscent to an 80s ballad, with the harsher chorus getting some really nice tension in lower notes with distortion into some cleaner guitar tones on higher, giving relief. It makes it a really well composed song with classical phrasing. Definitely one of my favorite tracks on the album. Miasma made me a Ghost fan. Everything about this song is done exactly the way I want a song like this to work at a bass level, and then some. This song is a really well-developed instrumental that starts rather small with just some basic instrumentation, and adds layers of complexity and new instrumentation as it goes along. It also has some throwbacks to the previous track, See the Light, by using the same power chords and an altered but very similar lead melody. The sax towards the end is super fun too. Dance Macabre doesn't really fit the album too well. It's less aggressive, hair glam metal, and it's written like a pop song. I feel like Ghost didn't go twisted enough with this track for it to lyrically work for me. It really comes across as if I Was Made for Loving You by Kiss had less bite. That song worked because Paul Stanley asserts that he was created with the sole purpose of fucking you. Ghost does not work well with a love song played straight, because when you take the vocals on this song, that mind you lyrically and compositionally doesn't fit into the album, out of the context of the album it comes across as whiny. I'm mildly afraid that if I reject him he's gonna complain about me to Reddit or some shit like that. When your song comes across cheesier than a Kiss song with the premise that a man who calls himself the Star Child is designed to fuck you, you may have gone slightly wrong. It even sounds like a Kiss song in instrumentation. In short, the song doesn't feel like the Ghost the rest of this album has brought me to love. Pro Memoria is the absolute cream of the crop. I really love the orchestral instrumentation introduction we get here before going on to the piano ballad about not forgetting to die. Up to this track on my first listen, I really thought Ghost was holding themselves back creatively by singing. The best instrumentation up to this point was reserved for the instrumental, some short solos, and the lead-ins. But this song brings church bells and church organ to the table with a softer tone overall that delivers a harsh message and one of the best juxtapositions I have heard in music. Which Image is the better version of Dance Macabre. It feels lyrically and instrumentally like a really good Nick Kershaw song, especially with the flute synth, but it doesn't feel nearly as derivative. It's also a hell of a lot more twisted than Dance Macabre was. Also, did I mention flute synth? I wish this was the single instead of Dance Macabre, because even though pop in composition, this song feels twisted and demented and manages to get some cheeky instrumentation in as well. Remember how I gushed briefly about Miasma bringing back instrumentation and progressions from earlier track? This track, that I am not going to try and pronounce at this moment,
Helvetes Fonster,
does it even more. I really love all three of the reprises, even the Dance Macabre one, although my favorite one by far is the one for Pre Memoria with the orchestral reprise of the chorus. No sax solo, but it's still a fucking amazing track that is hard to describe in words. Life Eternal is a pretty alright ballad. I like the proggy organs during the chorus, and I do like the vocal layering they do here quite a bit, and that brings the track up. But I really don't think the song goes far enough with anything lyrically and instrumentally. It's a fairly played straight love ballad, but with the slight twist of the recipient being dead because of Black Death, so it's miles ahead of Dance Macabre, but it's still not as amazing as I wanted it to be. It would most likely work better for me if this wasn't the closer, but to have any track in an album that got as huge sounding and as experimental as Prequelle did, and not wind down but start down, is really not as satisfying a closer as this album deserves in my eyes. Ghost holds back very few punches. This album is fairly in your face, but that's what you want from it, and it works for the most part. The callbacks on the instrumentals make it feel slightly classical in composition, and makes me want Ghost to create a full-on hard rock fugue, but that's just the music nerd in me. I really love all the lead-ins, tie-ins, and most of the thematic groupings on this album. Since first listening to it upon its release, I do come back to this, in my opinion, 8 out of 10 album occasionally, about every month or two, and you can commonly find me jamming out to my favorite tracks: Miasma, Faith, See the Light, Pro Memoria, and
Helvetes Fonster.
And sometimes even vibing with my least favorite track, Dance Macabre. Thanks for your support, Devon.
Helvetes Fonster.